On May 17, 2018, leading collagen brand Vital Proteins was served a stipulated consent judgment by the Court of the State of California, County of Alameda, which basically means they reached a pre-trial agreement on punishment and corrective measures for allegedly contravening the state of California's Proposition 65. Under Proposition 65, the state of California maintains a list of chemicals that are known to cause cancer, birth defects, and other reproductive harm. The list currently contains more than 900 chemicals, including lead, cadmium, mercury, and some pesticides. If a business in California exposes consumers to a chemical on the Proposition 65 list above a certain level, it's required to provide a clear and reasonable warning to the consumer. The warning must be provided in a manner that's clear and conspicuous and that effectively communicates the potential risks associated with the exposure. Proposition 65 is enforced by the California Attorney General's Office as well as by individuals and organizations that can bring lawsuits against businesses for alleged violations of the law. Penalties for violating Proposition 65 can include civil fines of up to $2,500 per day for each violation. Vital Proteins' alleged violation was identified and pursued by the Environmental Research Center Incorporated, a California non-profit organization. Vital Proteins settled with the Environmental Research Center in a deal that cost them $92,500 in fines and legal fees. Now, on the face of it, it would seem Vital Proteins accepting this cost and agreeing to the stipulated consent judgment is effectively an admission of guilt, since you would assume if they had solid evidence to the contrary, they would have fought the case. Or perhaps not. Perhaps paying $92,500 seemed like a pretty cost-effective and quick end to the process that may have cost them more in legal fees and negative press if they were to oppose. Considering you can incur fines of up to $2,500 per day, and the judgment report stated that ongoing violations have occurred every day since at least November 14, 2014 to the 17th of May 2018, they could have been exposed to a maximum fine of $3.2 million. This makes a $92,500 settlement seem like a bargain. It's not clear from the published case report what levels the ERC measured in Vital Proteins products when they tested them, and what their specific testing methodology and the subsequent reliability of these figures was. So it's hard to see the full picture. But the ERC must have held some solid, verified evidence against them for this to be accepted by the judge and for Vital Proteins to concede to the judgment before it went to trial. Before we look at the specific Vital Proteins products that fell foul of Proposition 65 and understand the current standing of these products in terms of lead and cadmium content, let's first look a little bit closer at what Proposition 65 is and why Vital Proteins may have fallen foul of these specific limits, but not of any other state or nationwide limits, and this may give us some indication of the extent to which Vital Proteins exceeded the set safety standards for lead and cadmium content. Proposition 65 sets strict limits on the allowable levels of lead and cadmium in food and consumer products sold in California. For example, the allowable limit for lead in candy is 0.1 parts per million, compared with the federal limit of 0.5 parts per million. Similarly, the allowable limit for cadmium in some types of food is 4.1 parts per million, compared with the federal limit of 5 parts per million. Meaning it's quite possible for food and food supplement manufacturers to fall foul of the more stringent Californian limits for lead and cadmium content, but still sit comfortably within nationwide limits. California is often cited as having some of the most stringent regulations in the United States, aside from Washington, which appears to have an even more stringent rule on lead content in food items. It's therefore reasonable to assume, since Vital Proteins only encountered issues with lead and cadmium content in the state of California, that their products still sat within limits deemed safe by other states, and indeed other countries, just not California. That's obviously no excuse. Lead's not good, so the less you're exposed to, the better, and the same goes for cadmium. But what's most interesting about this case is the specific products that were falling foul of Proposition 65. It actually relates to 4 specific lines in the Vital Proteins range, and not one of these was their most popular unflavoured marine or bovine collagen peptide products. The products featured in the case were Vital Proteins grass-fed, pasture-raised collagen whey with cocoa and coconut water, which failed on the basis of both lead and cadmium. Vital Proteins collagen veggie blend, which failed on the basis of both lead and cadmium. Vital Proteins collagen peptides, dark chocolate and blackberry, which failed on the basis of lead content only. And Vital Proteins grass-fed, pasture-raised collagen peptides with vanilla and coconut water, which failed on the basis of lead content only. Now, this is interesting because lead and cadmium come from the soil and/or contaminated water. And typically food products become contaminated within the raw material itself. For example, if a fruit or vegetable is grown in soil with a high level of lead or cadmium, then those fruits and vegetables absorb more of these heavy metals and contribute a higher concentration of lead or cadmium to the final product in which they're used. Cocoa in particular is known to be a common source of lead and cadmium contamination. There's been numerous consumer group studies across leading brands of chocolate and cocoa powders, and it's alarming how many fall foul of the safe lead and/or cadmium levels. Major brands like Lindt, Green and Blacks and Trader Joe's were found to fail these tests. So it's no surprise to see that 2 of Vital Proteins products in this judgment were featuring cocoa. I would guess that the presence of cocoa at the very least contributed to the unfavourable level of lead and cadmium in these products, but more likely were the sole cause of these products failing the tests. Coconuts are grown in similar regions to cocoa on small farms where, aside from being predisposed to heavy metal content in the soil and the water that they use on the crops, they also tend to still use pesticides on non-organic crops, of course, that contain lead. So it's a bit of a double whammy. The combination of these factors increases the risk of lead and cadmium contamination in cocoa and coconuts dramatically. So again, out of the 4 products that form the judgment against Vital Proteins, the 2 that don't contain cocoa contain coconut instead, or vegetables known to carry a similar risk profile of lead and cadmium contamination as coconuts and cocoa. I think it's quite telling that their plain unflavoured collagen peptide products didn't feature in this judgment. These are by far Vital Proteins' top selling products, so they definitely had a presence in the Californian market at the same time as these less popular flavoured and blended versions were picked up for lead and cadmium contamination. I think this alone leads me to the conclusion that it probably wasn't the bovine or marine collagen peptides themselves that were at fault and that caused the lead and/or cadmium contamination. It was more likely the ingredients that were added to the collagen, like the cocoa, the coconut water, and the vegetable powders, that led to the alleged violation of the state of California's Proposition 65. And to add more weight to this thesis, there was actually a consumer group study that took place around the same time as a lead and cadmium judgment came to light, that specifically tested Vital Proteins' unflavoured bovine collagen product for lead, cadmium and arsenic content, and they specifically used the state of California's Proposition 65 limits as the benchmark for assessment, and the product passed. It was also verified to contain the full amount of collagen peptides stated per serving on the pack. An interesting side note from this study was that the only product to fail the heavy metal testing in this entire consumer group study, and it wasn't a Vital Proteins product, it was a different brand, was a collagen powder that was flavoured with, you guessed it, cocoa powder. Again, lending credibility to the argument that the select Vital Proteins collagen products that did allegedly fall foul of Proposition 65 were likely due to added products and not due to the core ingredient, collagen peptides, being the source of lead or cadmium contamination. So there you have it. I hope this video helped to shed some light on the situation with Vital Proteins and their alleged lead and cadmium contaminations in their products. When you look at the details, there's rational reasoning as to why this might have occurred, and there is probably little cause for concern if you're just consuming the unflavoured basic collagen peptide products from Vital Proteins. Plus, this happened back in 2018, so it's likely that even the flavoured variations have been amended to sit within the more stringent Californian lead and cadmium limits. And if you have any doubts, our video sponsor, Verify Lab, can test products for you, and specific heavy metal contamination testing for substances like cadmium and lead starts from just £103. You can learn more about them at the end of this video. If you like the content, please go ahead and subscribe. You can do that here or below the video. And don't forget to also hit the bell symbol when you do so you can be notified of any new health and wellness videos that we post. Thanks for watching. This video is sponsored by Verifier Lab. Did you know that a recent study across various food supplements found that over 31% were contaminated by highly damaging or illegal substances, that 51% didn't adequately break down to allow the body to actually absorb the active ingredients, and that over 46% were not accurately labelled. In some instances, they contained no active ingredients. That's 0 milligrams of whatever strength they were advertising on the front of the label, 0. Verifier Lab are food supplement verification specialists, bringing safety and transparency to the food supplement industry to help you separate the bad brands from the good brands. Just send them a sample of the supplement that you take, tell them what you'd like them to check for. It could be to confirm the supplement strength, the core ingredient, to check for damaging contaminants, for microbial agents, allergens, almost anything. And you'll get your lab results emailed back within 7 days to tell you what you want to know about your supplement. Check them out at verifierlab.com and use the code UNCOVERED for 30% off your first order. Now back to the video.